Circle City in the respect that that was part of a racetrack. So I think it's really no coincidence that we've ended up in Corona. We moved from Orange County out into Corona in 2008, and that has actually worked really well because doing business in Corona to be really pretty easy. Not as much red tape, not as long in the processing. The city is very accommodating to business on a very practical basis and a need, and really a lot of times understand the nuances that we're trying to get done or the urgency of trying to get something done. And it has been very, very gratifying actually working with the mayors over the years as well as the city council. From a human resource standpoint, to be a very good locale, physically being adjacent to the 91 freeway, getting deliveries, shipments. We're also able to tap into a much bigger pool in Riverside County for the actual manufacturing. Even notoriety with our building facing the freeway has worked out really well. Not to say that we haven't tested a few cars down the freeway as well.
Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will convene the open session. At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. Individuals wishing to address the Board of Trustees are requested to complete a speaker card and deliver the card to the city clerk staff prior to the item being heard by the Board of Trustees. Please observe a three-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. The next item is communication from the public. This portion of the agenda is intended for general public comment. only on items within the Board of Trustees jurisdiction and that are not listed elsewhere on the agenda. Please note that state law prohibits the Board of Trustees from discussing or taking action on these items. Please observe a 3-minute limit for communications, and once called upon to speak, we request that you state your name and city of residence for the record. I don't have any speaker cards, but we do have somebody on Zoom.
I don't know if he raised his hand.
I don't know if his hand is raised. Nope.
Like it.
Thank you. So for agenda items number 1, the election of the chairperson. A trustee will be elected to serve as chairperson. The chairperson shall hold office indefinitely, provided that when a particular chairperson has held office for 2 years or at any time thereafter, any trustee may obtain or request a rotation of offices or a new election or both. A chairperson may resign their office at any time. Is there a motion for the election of chairperson?
I move to elect trustee City Treasurer Chad Willardson as chairperson.
Second.
Those in favor of trustee Willardson for chairperson say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Trustee Willardson has received the majority of yes votes and is elected to serve as chairperson. And I don't have any speaker cards for the item. Agenda item 2 is the election of the secretary. A trustee will be elected to serve as secretary. The secretary shall hold office indefinitely, provided that a particular secretary has held office for 2 years or at any time thereafter. Any trustee may obtain, on request, a rotation of offices or a new election or both. A secretary may resign their office at any time. Is there a motion for the election of secretary?
I move to elect trustee city manager Jacob Ellis as secretary.
I'll second that.
Those in favor of trustee Ellis for secretary say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed
Aye.
say no. Trustee Ellis has received a majority of aye votes and is elected to serve as secretary. I do not have any speaker cards for this agenda item.
All right, is it now over to the chairperson to conduct the meeting from here?
Yes, it is.
All right, and does the chairperson have a agenda with the speaking notes in it?
Chad, do you have that with you?
I do not.
Okay. We emailed it to your personal email address this morning.
Okay, just this morning. Let me check.
I think we need to change the cameras in this room. These ones definitely add 10 pounds.
Or more.
Okay, so I have the email. I don't see any attachment. I see a reference to an attachment of the agenda, but I'm sorry, I don't see an actual attachment.
You want me to do it, Jacob?
Yeah, go ahead. Sylvia, we'll just have Sylvia take care of it for this one. It's pretty quick here, Chad, if that's okay with you.
That's fine.
Okay.
So now we're on agenda item 3, trustee board meeting and Calpers, I can't say the word, reports update. Kimson, finance director, will please present the item.
Okay, well, good morning. This morning we're going to talk a little bit about the trustee board, why we're here and what the meetings are about, the pension stabilization trust investment reports, and the update from the actuarial Calpers reports. So the first item is to talk a little bit about the history of the trustee board. So the City Council approved pension obligation bonds in January of 2021, and those bonds were issued in October of 2021. As part of that process to issue those bonds, the City Council also approved a pension management policy, and that's to ensure that we stay ahead of this issue in the future. One of the key elements to that pension management policy is the establishment of a pension stabilization trust, and the council did approve an initial contribution of $30 million. The trustee board is made up of 5 members that serve as an advisory group to the city council, city treasurer, the city manager, assistant city manager, finance director, and accounting manager are the positions that will serve on this board or this group. There will be at least 2 public meetings per year, subject to the Brown Act. In October, after the Calpers actuarial annual reports are released and they're received by staff and reviewed, and then we'll discuss the results of those annual reports. And then we'll also hold another meeting in January after the end of the year audit is completed and the financial statements are issued. And that will be to discuss any of the pension stabilization contribution recommendations that we want to make to the city council. And that will be based on general fund fiscal year end surplus and our pension management policy. So now taking a look at the pension stabilization trust investments. Like I said, there was a $30 million initial contribution, and the value as of July 31st is $30,001,818. There are 2 documents primary to this pension stabilization trust. There's the investment policy, and then we have pension stabilization trust investment reports, which are issued on a monthly basis. And the pension stabilization trust comes at the very end of the regular monthly investment report. Those documents can be found on the city's website under the finance department and under the category of investments. The investment report is also posted monthly with city council agendas, generally the second meeting of the month. So now talking a little bit about the Calpers actuarial reports. So there's a 1-year lag when Calpers values the reports as to when we actually receive them. So the valuation reports were for June 30th of 2021, and those were received in August of this year. We have 4 different plans, the Fire Classic members, Fire Pepra members. And those are just a little different because they're in a risk pool. There was a smaller employee base, and so those are in a risk pool, and that's why those are separated, Classic and Pepra. And then our police is all in one plan, and our miscellaneous, and that's all non-public safety positions would make up that miscellaneous group of employees. So those different evaluation plan reports are attached to this agenda for this meeting and also available on the city's website under the finance page. So a quick look at the valuation reports for dated June 30 of 2021. In this table, you'll see fiscal years 22 through 29. The first column is the normal cost, and that's a percentage of actual payroll, and that percentage varies by each of those different employee groups, those 4 groups I told you about on the previous slide. This is an item that will never go away. You'll never pay this off. This will always be something that recurs every single fiscal year, and you'll always have a normal cost. The next column to the right is the required UAL, or unfunded accrued liability contribution. That excludes the normal cost, and you'll see for fiscal year 22, we originally started off with an estimate of $19.9 million. We did issue those bonds in fiscal year 22, so that reduced what we paid on the UAL to $5 million, and then everything shifted over to the pension obligation bonds. And then moving down that column in fiscal year 23, we only needed to make a UAL payment on the Fire Pepra plan. And for fiscal year 24, the amount is 0. And then 25 through 29, you'll see those amounts are to be determined. And then kind of moving over to the bullet points on the right, you'll see that when we paid off the UAL with the pension obligation bonds, we ended up with a savings of $20.6 to $24.5 million per fiscal year. But that savings goes right back into paying those debt service payments on the pension obligation bonds. So essentially we shifted one type of debt into another, refinancing, if you will. So we were able to take advantage of the historically low interest rates and to accelerate the payment of the payoff of the UAL, paid off in a shorter period of time. 13 years as compared to 20 plus years with Calpers. Fiscal year 2025, UAL and any future years, that will be based on the actuarial reports we receive next fiscal year. So one of the things that we know is with, even though the pension obligation bonds paid off the UAL at this point in time, every year Calpers will assess a new unfunded accrued liability. So in our pension management policy, we developed this plan of how to address that. So the city will endeavor to pay off any new unfunded liabilities as follows, subject to available funding. $0 to $5 million would be a 1 to 2 year plan. $5 million and $1 to $10 million would be 1 to 4 years. $10 million and $1 to $15 million would be 1 to 6 years, and over $15 million would be 1 to 8 years. So staff will provide recommendations to the City Council as part of the mid-year budget update. Based on discussions with the Pension Stabilization Trust Board of Trustees, that meeting that we hold in January, that's what we'll make that determination of what to bring to City Council at mid-year. And at that point, we'll talk to the City Council about the amount of any new unfunded liability, the number of years we're recommending to pay it off, the dollar amount of any annual contribution, the funding source, and both short-term and long-term financial impacts on the general fund. So the next steps really for this group are to hold our next meeting in January of 2023 with the date to be determined once we've finished the actuarial reports, the financial statements, and know the final general fund year-end surplus. And that concludes my presentation, unless anyone has any questions.
Thank you, Kim. That was great.
Thank you.
I think one thing I'll add to that is just re-emphasizing how critical it was for us to get this set up with the rates where they were, considering what's happened in the last 6 months with the Fed funds rate and all that's happened in the interest rate markets. So hats off to the team and Jacob and everyone else for making sure that we pushed it through at the right time. That was a big, big win for the city.
I agree.
Thanks, Chad. We agree. It was a big win. Sylvia, do we have any speaker cards?
We do not have any speaker cards.
All right. No other questions?
Sounds like meeting's adjourned. We just pick a date for January and we'll get back together.
Yes, we'll work on picking a date for January, and yes, and that's it for today. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.